Support for Louisiana, the state we're in, is provided by...
Every day, I go to work for Entergy.
I know customers are counting on me.
So Entergy is investing millions of dollars
to keep the lights on
and installing new technology
to prevent outages before they happen.
Together,
we power life.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.
Hello everyone, I'm Karen LeBlanc.
And I'm Kara St. Cyr. According to new budget forecasts, incoming governor-elect Jeff Landry will inherit millions of dollars in surplus once he takes office in January.
The $330 million surplus will be divided between the rainy day fund, retirement debt, and one-time projects like coastal restoration. Lawmakers will decide how to spend the rest during Landry's first legislative session in the spring.
This is good news for the state, as lawmakers are anticipating a $700 million gap in the state budget. The surplus may help give them a cushion.
We'll have much more on those top stories in a moment, but first, on this week's edition of Louisiana, the state we're in, here are some headlines making news across the state.
Louisiana ranks #1 nationwide for pursuing federal broadband funding, moving closer to its goal of closing the state's digital divide by 2029. Louisiana is expected to receive $1.35 billion from the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, funded by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. The funding will help connect 200,000 locations statewide to broadband service. Saltwater intrusion is slowing, according to the latest forecast from the Army Corps of Engineers. The Corps pushed back expected impacts of saltwater intrusion to drinking water supplies on the New Orleans West Bank and Gretna by a full month. That's December. The Corps say salinity levels won't reach health hazard levels for the entire New Orleans East Bank or the rest of West Jefferson. Developments are attributed to the construction of a sill and higher than expected flows on the Mississippi River. Governor John Bel Edwards has unveiled a $500 million initiative to enhance energy resilience through a network of clean energy hubs across communities. The hubs are to be equipped with long-lasting energy storage and grid technologies to strengthen emergency response efforts. The program is funded by a $250 million grant from the U.S. Department of Energy through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law with an equal state match. The hubs will rely on clean energy sources like solar panels and provide essential services, including electricity during natural disasters. Louisiana's Fortify Homes program opened its second round of grants on October 16th. The grants are available for up to $10,000 to repair or replace roofs to the fortified roof standard of the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. Homeowners insured by Louisiana Citizens Property Insurance Corporation are eligible to apply. The program aims to strengthen homes against severe storms and high winds, contributing to a more stable property insurance market in Louisiana. Louisiana officials are considering the possibility of a hunting season for black bears after the species was removed from the endangered list in 2015 due to a resurgence in their population. The Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries Commission is expected to vote on the matter in November, with discussions leading toward a conservative harvest in limited areas.
Louisiana Attorney General Jeff Landry swept the primary election over the weekend in a landslide win. He took home 52% of the vote. John Couvion, a pollster and the founder of JMC Analytics, says this was just one of the notable trends from election night. I spoke with him earlier this week about more voter trends he found all over the state. first, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Sure.
All right, let's jump into this. So it's been a few days. We know that Attorney General Jeff Landry is now the governor-elect of Louisiana. What were the numbers, and were they what you were expecting?
You know, I and probably nearly everybody else in Louisiana was surprised that he was able to win without a runoff. And his getting 52% of the vote compared to Sean Wilson's 26%, that to me is an unambiguous margin, and I certainly wasn't expecting anything that large.
Well, when you were looking at early voting results, were they kind of skewed in this direction?
So when I started off with early voting, I was mentally expecting something like 45 to 31, which is the percentage of the vote Jeff would have gotten versus the percentage of the vote Sean Wilson would have gotten. As the night was going on, however, I was noticing, particularly in the rural parishes, Jeff was nearly, without exception, overperforming expectations, and so that 45% became 47%, while as Sean, almost without exception, underperformed my expectations, and he was getting 29%. Then when you combine that with the election day vote, which was even more favorable for Jeff, Jefferson Parish was a perfect example where a Jeff lead of +4 went to +14 with the election day vote. That all that combined enabled Jeff to win without a runoff, and so it was kind of a case of his vote share just kept going up and up and up throughout the night.
And normally, I mean, it usually does go to a runoff, especially whenever you have only one Democratic candidate versus a bunch of other Republican candidates, which was the case this time.
Correct. And so the thing that was interesting to me was the fact that Sean was staying below 30, and that given the abysmally low turnout in Orleans Parish, there were not enough Democratic votes to rescue him. And the reason, of course, I'm bringing up Orleans Parish is traditionally they report later in the evening, but that vote is so monolithically Democratic. If you see a percentage change where, say, a Republican drops several percentage points in a flash, that typically means some portion of the Orleans Parish vote has reported.
So let's talk about voter turnout statewide, about how many people actually did show up and go to the polls.
So it was 36%, which was pretty low for a statewide election. However, it's not the lowest we've ever seen. One similar turnout I recall from going all the way back to 2007, in the 2011 primary when Bobby Jindal was reelected with basically nominal opposition, that was a 37% turnout compared to the 36% that we saw Saturday night.
Is there a parish or an area that had, the lowest turnout of the entire state?
From what I remember, Orleans Parish turnout was abysmally low. More specifically, it was in the 20s.
Wow.
And that's just, especially when you had several interesting state representative and other races in the parish, for the turnout to be that low was indicative of just people were not into this election.
So let's talk about the other candidates. I mean, we know about Sean Wilson and, of course, Jeff Landry, but there were several other Republican candidates. How did they fare?
So what happened was you basically had two other Republican and an independent candidate, all of whom were spending heavily and were on TV. John Schroeder, the state treasurer, Stephen Wagaspak, the head of or former head, I should say, of the state's biggest business lobby, and attorney Hunter Lundy, who was running as an independent. All three of them finished with about 5%, which, considering the fact that they spent heavily and were on TV a lot, they did not get an appropriate return for their investment when you looked at their final showings on election night.
Wow, so hardly any of the vote was spread out between any of these candidates.
It was not statistically significant, no, because when you combine the 52 that Jeff got with the 26 that Sean got, so that's 78%, throw in the 5, 5, and 6 that the other three got, now you're talking about a percentage in the 90s. So, like I said, the vote pretty much coalesced behind Jeff and Sean, and nobody else had a chance to break through.
So there were other things that were on the ballot. So people were voting for Secretary of State and also the Attorney General. What happened with those races?
So in that race, she actually had technically two races that ended up without going to runoff. The governor's race, as we just mentioned, and Lieutenant Governor Billy Nungesser was overwhelmingly reelected with 66%. Secretary of State and Attorney General's races and Treasurer, they're all going to the November runoff. Secretary of State, you have Gwen Collins Greenup, who has run before. She'll be the Democratic quote-unquote nominee. She'll face Nancy Landry, who's a Republican and second in charge in the Secretary of State's office. The Attorney General's office, what will happen is Liz Murrell, who was Jeff Landry's right-hand person at the Attorney General's office, she's running for his old job. She finished with a very strong 46% of the vote. She'll be facing Democratic Attorney Lindsay Cheek from New Orleans. The Treasurer's race, what will happen is former Congressman John Fleming, and he's also a medical doctor and Navy veteran. John Fleming received 44% of the vote. He ran first. He'll be facing a Democrat named Dustin Granger from Lake Charles.
All right, so there's definitely some stuff that is still going to be decided. It's yet to come. But thank you so much for joining us. I believe we are out of time.
My pleasure.
Fortune magazine has recognized Louisiana's only state-funded boarding school as one of the world's best. The Louisiana School for Math, Science, and the Arts in Natchitoches is celebrating 40 years of educating academically advanced, college-bound high school students. LSMSA, its abbreviated moniker, opened its doors in 1983, welcoming students from every district in the state. I spent a day at the school visiting with students and faculty and learning how LSMSA is earning high marks in and outside the classroom.
I am trying to pursue computer science, but also growing up for 12 years now, I have been dancing. So hopefully I'm trying to keep that up on the side.
Before I came here, I didn't really have a teacher. It was usually just online lessons. I was able to work with Dr. Jones, who is a very experienced piano teacher here at LSWI, and he's giving me a new light into the music world.
So what made you decide to leave your hometown of Baton Rouge and to move here?
A lot of that is independence, not only in taking harder courses and managing my time and growing as a student, but I wanted to grow as a person as well.
So my grandfather, Donald Gene Kelly, he is the last living founder of the Louisiana School, and I'm the first grandchild to come here. I came here looking for a harder academic challenge, more opportunities to look towards my career options, and to get more exposure.
Academic instruction plus the arts, sports, student clubs, and residential living is the equation that makes the Louisiana School for Math, Science, and the Arts a school of life.
It's the growth that they experienced in those adolescent years as a result of being here 24 hours a day as a living, learning student. The growth emotionally, spiritually, definitely academically is proving itself over and over.
On September 29, 1983, the Louisiana School for Math, Science, and the Arts celebrated its grand opening, making headlines as Whiz Kid High.
It's surprising how many people still don't know that we're an option, and I think that that's one of those secrets that we would really like to be less well kept, so that more families can know what a great opportunity they have right here in Louisiana for their kids.
In 1983, State Representative Jimmy Long of Natchitoches introduced legislation to create a public residential high school offering intense college prep classes to promising juniors and seniors. The state-funded school was open to students throughout Louisiana.
Louisville is in a pretty rural part of Louisiana, so access to opportunities were pretty limited, especially educationally, so that's why I decided to come here to LSMSA, where there's so many educational opportunities and even opportunities outside of that.
So I came here because of the AIT program. It's Artist in Training. I didn't have the opportunities at my old school to pursue art that I was trying to do because I was in orchestra, so I only had one art class that I was allowed to do. Here,
there will always be a need for the Louisiana School. The rural parishes cannot provide what the urban parishes can. So those students need this kind of an institution.
When you start to actually write your first draft, you're going to have several pages that you've already scribbled down.
So we look for students who are looking for more of a challenge, more of rigorous experience than they can get in a traditional high school. We ask students to complete an online application and then submit copies of their grades from previous years, as well as an ACT or an SAT score and some recommendations from current teachers and their principal or guidance counselor.
They're taking the equivalent of 21, 24, 27 credit hours from college, and they're excelling.
Just as the teachers hold students to a high standard, the students expect to be challenged by their instructors.
We teach college level, not college prep classes. These are the exact same classes that I've taught university undergraduates. If anything, I have had to raise my game just to reach their skill level.
What about these values? They're getting further from zero, so their reciprocals get closer to zero.
Many students are graduating with enough college credit hours for an associate's degree, plus plenty of real-world experiences, giving them a head start in their higher education pursuits and career aspirations.
I was able to partake in a program through our sister school in North Carolina, the North Carolina School of Science and Math, where I did research at UNC Chapel Hill, and I researched HIV pathogenesis and transmission.
And what was that opportunity like for you as a high school student?
It was amazing. Like, research has been a dream of mine for years, and I never thought I would be able to have that opportunity in high school.
This is a public boarding school. Students don't pay tuition. They do pay room and board. Now, the school has a generous community of benefactors that fund a foundation offering financial assistance for families in need.
This is called the Live and Learning Community. That means playing sports together. That means reading, studying together. It means crying together. It means life happening. And they're doing all of that while being challenged with a college curriculum, while learning to live away from home for the first time.
They're developing leadership skills. They're also learning how to be young adults, because many of them are getting ready to transition and go off to college and have to do many of these things on their own. So we not only want them to have a really great academic experience, but we also want them to have a true high school experience.
I think this is a particularly special place in that what we're doing here is we're planting horticulturally. The educators here, we're not going to see the fruits of our efforts 20 years from now. And maybe the bittersweet moments of being an educator, we're helping to raise them in conjunction with their wonderful parents. We're not always going to see the beautiful things they're going to do with their life, but we do know, we are convinced they are going to do beautiful things.
What if a computer program could help you beat a breast cancer diagnosis? What if it were so precise that you could use it for a treatment plan? These are the questions a group of scientists at LSU are asking themselves as they race to build an AI software so sophisticated it can do just that. Take a look. Breast cancer is the second leading cause of death for women in the U.S., and its ubiquity is becoming more prevalent among younger groups of women. The U.S. Preventative Task Force is suggesting women start breast cancer screening at 40 years old instead of 50, which was the original recommendation. Meanwhile, the American Cancer Society is recording an annual 0.5% increase in breast cancer incidences. While treatment is best handled before the cancer is detected, there is a movement among scientists to precisely pinpoint treatment plans after a diagnosis. And it's starting at LSU.
I'm associate professor in the Department of Biological Sciences at LSU, and also associate director for data science and machine learning in the Center of Computation and Technology.
Dr. Michael Berlinski is focusing his research on treating breast cancer with AI technology.
Whenever a lot of people think of AI, and whenever I say a lot of people, I'm talking about myself, they think of, robots running around, picking out different drugs for a cancer patient.
No, it's basically a computer program. So I would say that 90% of my time is just coding, or people in my group. So we just code all the time. So AI in sense of a computer program that is going to be trained on existing data, and then it's going to be able to make predictions. So that's basically software.
The software takes all of the available data on breast cancer, prostate cancer, and pancreatic cancer, plus information from the patient's DNA. From there, AI can pinpoint a drug plan unique to that particular patient.
So our idea is to use the genetic profile of a particular cancer to figure out what's the best therapy against that cancer. And even cancer of the same time, but from different patients, they may have slight variations in their genetic makeup, and AI is going to account for this and suggest the most efficient drugs.
The treatment is going to be very unique to that particular patient.
Yes, this is correct.
Can you give me an example?
Yes, so that's still a very long shot. So right now we are doing basic research. So we work on cancer cell lines in vitro, that's in the lab. However, each cell line that we work with was originally obtained from a cancer patient, right? So those are like real cancers that somebody had in the past, and they were immortalized, and now people use them in the lab. So The data that we would need is the genetics, the genetic makeup, gene expression profiles, and all those things as an input for AI. And then AI is going to select the most efficient drug against that particular, in our case, it's a cell line, but eventually it could be patient.
Here's an example of the cells Berlinski is talking about. These are cancer cells from a 7-year-old patient. The cells on the right are cancerous, over-reproducing in mass. This is the control group left untreated. On the left is a group of the same cancer cells treated with a drug treatment plan selected by AI. You can see the movement is slower, and the cancer is stalling.
We run this in control and drug treatment side by side, right? So in those videos that I sent you, in control, you will see that those cell lines proliferate like crazy because this is what cancer does, right? It's a very aggressive disease and it grows like really, really fast. Whereas those cell lines that were treated with drugs selected by AI didn't grow that much or even died. So that was the proof that AI was actually right, suggesting this molecule against this particular cancer.
Berlinski and his team of 10 aren't the only biologists using AI to treat this disease. Dr. Sung-Won Yang is using AI to improve breast cancer detection so that preventative care is more precise. Their research uses an algorithm to diagnose breast cancer in all areas using one mammogram picture. The science is new, and it'll take years of testing before AI tech is used on human beings. But Berlinski says this could change the course of medical treatment in all fields.
It's a tool that can guide and help. So this is how AI should be used, I believe.
October is Louisiana Archeology Month, spotlighting the state's many archaeological treasures with family-friendly events showcasing artifacts and ancient sites. Activities culminate on International Archaeology Day, Saturday, October 21st. A recent dig in the Kisatchie National Forest unearthed some newfound ancient finds. I followed the dig from the site to the lab where artifacts are revealing the story of early human history in Louisiana.
This archaeological site in the Kisatchie National Forest dates back 12,000 years. I can't reveal its forest location to protect the ancient site from looting. However, a recent dig unearthed more than 30,000 artifacts, now undergoing cleaning and cataloging at the Louisiana Public Archaeology Lab at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette.
I am sorting the flakes based off type. So there's tertiary flakes, secondary flake, and primary flakes, and that's based off of at what part of the tool making process they were made. And then so determine which category so we can go back later and look at the weights and the counts.
Anthropology and archaeology student Gloria Church is part of the team piecing together the story of one of the state's oldest archaeological sites.
What has been the most fascinating discovery or realization in participating in this project?
Just figuring out that there could have been a more permanent settlement. It's really rare for undergrads to get the type of experience that we're getting here, especially with the in-lab stuff and supervising jobs and being paid for it.
Park rangers have known about the site for years. It lay protected and quietly supervised, hidden in plain sight until 2020, when hurricanes Laura and Delta uprooted parts of the forest.
We have about 6,000 archaeological sites on Kisatchie National Forest. So when the storm came through, we knew the sites were heavily damaged. So we submitted a relief package to Congress for hurricane relief, and we received some funding to do some salvage archaeology at the archaeological sites that were damaged on Kisatchie National Forest.
The Louisiana Public Archaeology Lab works with federal and state agencies to discover and examine archaeological sites.
At the Louisiana Public Archaeology Lab, we're interested in the full time span of Louisiana's past. It comes out to about 98% of Louisiana's past, we can say, is almost exclusively archaeological. Otherwise, we can draw on oral histories, and we can certainly draw on historical documentation. But that doesn't come in until about 300 years ago, which is, again, about 2% of Louisiana's past.
We have something like 23,000 that we've cataloged that weigh over 22 kilos. That's like 50 pounds or so, 50, 60 pounds. But we still have a bunch more, so I'm guessing there's going to be over 30,000. And that includes some of the stuff like what you were seeing right there. We're pretty sure that for the most part, a lot of them are mobile hunter-gatherers or foragers. I mean, we're finding things like points of different types. The later stuff are arrowheads, earlier stuff are dart points or even spear points. I mean, those are probably tools for hunting. We're finding things like drills for working wood. We're finding scrapers for scraping hides.
Students and archaeologists also unearthed the remains of wooden posts that were part of a semi-permanent shelter construction.
The post molds are interesting because that suggests that there's some kind of more permanent structure. There's not been a lot of that that's been found in this area. Maybe they're camping for days or weeks or maybe even months, but they're moving around to different places, following game during different seasons and such. There are possibilities of building structures for events. There's possibilities of actual settlement and permanent houses, and we're not sure, honestly, yet what we're talking about.
The lab is working to date soil samples at the site and determine the positions and the uses of stone flecks and projectile points, not to be confused with arrowheads, which Professor Reese says wasn't in use until around 600 AD.
So we'll have a report of all our findings, and we would like to put this together in a public document. In fact, I think the plan is to use information from this project as well as other projects in a published work, a published book that could inform Louisiana residents about their past.
And an exhibit?
Possibly so.
Yeah, that was definitely interesting. It's exciting too. I didn't think we'd have archaeological finds here in Louisiana.
Yeah, and actually there are several other sites in the forest, so lots of secrets to reveal. Well, that's our show for this week. Remember, you can watch anything LPB anytime, wherever you are, with our LPB PPS app.
You can catch LPB news and public affairs shows, as well as other Louisiana programs you've come to enjoy over the years. And please, like us on Facebook, X, and Instagram.
For everyone at Louisiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Karen LeBlanc.
And I'm Kara St. Cyr. Until next time, that's the state we're in.
Every day, I go to work for Entergy.
I know customers are counting on me.
So Entergy is investing millions of dollars to keep the lights on
And installing new technology to prevent outages before they happen.
Together.
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 We power life.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.